What if everything you believe about life and death is wrong? Imagine waking up in a world where the past refuses to stay buried, where the echoes of tragedy seep through the walls of your own home, and the faces of the lost return in ways that defy explanation. Tonight, we plunge into the chilling true story of the Pollock Twins, a case so disturbing, so meticulously documented, that it has haunted families, baffled scientists, and divided entire communities for decades. Two sisters, taken by a tragic accident, two new lives born with the scars and the memories of the dead, birthmarks that match old wounds, nightmares that replay a fatal Sunday morning, children who ask for toys hidden away since before they were born, and who speak of blood and fear no one ever told them about. Is this proof that death is not the end, or something far more terrifying, a mystery that science cannot explain, but that refuses to be forgotten? Most viewers of this channel aren't subscribed. If you crave the darkest mysteries and want to uncover the secrets that most are too afraid to face, hit that subscribe button now. Only by subscribing will you ensure you never miss the stories that reveal the unsettling truths lurking just beneath the surface of our world. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to hear will challenge everything you think you know about memory, identity, and the boundaries between life and death. Miss a single detail, and you might never understand the true horror of what happened, or what it means for all of us. I never believed in reincarnation, not really. Growing up in a small English town, stories like that belonged in old books or whispered conversations, not in real life. But everything changed after the accident that took my sisters. The memory of that day is like a wound that never healed. May 5th, 1957, a Sunday morning, the kind that should have been ordinary. Joanna was 11, Jacqueline was 6. They were walking to church. There, laughter echoing down the street. I remember the sound of tires screeching, the sudden silence that followed, and the way my mother screamed. After that, nothing was ever the same. My parents tried to keep going, but the grief was everywhere, clinging to the walls, seeping into every conversation. My mother, Florence, stopped eating and barely spoke. My father, John, became obsessed with the idea that Joanna and Jacqueline would somehow return to us. He talked about signs, about dreams he had, where the girls called out to him. I thought he was losing his mind. But then, a year and a half later, my mother gave birth to twins, two girls, Gillian and Jennifer. That's when things started to get strange. As twins, Gillian and Jennifer seemed ordinary at first. Just two identical sisters growing up in the shadow of a family tragedy. But as they got older, little things started to unsettle us. Jennifer had a small birthmark on her forehead, in the exact spot where Jacqueline, my younger sister, once had a scar from a childhood accident. Gillian, on the other hand, had a faint, oddly shaped mark on her left side, just like the one Joanna had. No one else in our family had marks like these. My parents tried to brush it off as coincidence, but I could see in their eyes that it bothered them more than they let on. When the twins were about 3, the strangeness deepened. They began asking for toys that had belonged to Joanna and Jacqueline, specific dolls and stuffed animals that had been packed away in the attic since the accident. They called them by the same names my sisters had used, even though no one had mentioned those names in years. Sometimes they would talk to each other about places in town they'd never visited, describing details only Joanna and Jacqueline could have known. It was as if my sisters had come back, but in new bodies, with fragments of old memories bleeding through. As changes continued, my parents started keeping a diary. They wrote down every odd thing the twins did or said. One entry described Gillian insisting she'd once gone to a school across town, the same school Joanna had attended, even though Gillian had never set foot there. Another time, Jennifer became hysterical when a car drove past too quickly, screaming that the car was coming to get us. The fear was raw, almost primal, and nothing could calm her down for hours. It was the same panic our family remembered from Jacqueline, who had always been terrified of traffic after a near miss before the fatal accident. The similarities didn't stop at memories or fears. Gillian naturally took on the role of the older, protective sister, just as Joanna had done. Jennifer, more sensitive and dependent, mirrored Jacqueline's personality. Even their handwriting and the way they held their pencils matched their deceased sisters. My parents, especially my father, became convinced that this was more than coincidence. He began reaching out to researchers, desperate for answers, while my mother struggled to accept what was happening, torn between faith and the unexplainable reality unfolding in our home. As weeks turned into months, the twins' behaviors became harder to ignore. My mother overheard them whispering about the blood coming from our mouths, a detail that matched the aftermath of the accident but had never been shared with them. Sometimes they'd wake up screaming from nightmares, describing scenes that mirrored the crash, horses, screeching wheels, and the cold pavement. My parents began to argue more, torn between wanting to protect the girls and fearing what their memories might mean. The line between coincidence and something unexplainable kept blurring, making our home feel less like a place of comfort and more like a haunted echo of the past. The community started to notice too. Neighbors whispered about the Pollock twins, wondering if we were cursed or if something supernatural had taken root in our family. My father, desperate for answers, contacted Dr. Ian Stevenson, a psychiatrist known for studying cases of supposed reincarnation. Dr. Stevenson visited when the twins were 4, observing them and interviewing us. He wrote down everything: their birthmarks, their memories, their fears. He said our case was one of the most compelling he'd ever seen. But even his presence did little to ease the tension in our house. Instead, it made everything feel more real, as if the line between life and death had truly been crossed. As the years went by, the twins' memories began to fade, just as Dr. Stevenson had warned us might happen. By the time Gillian and Jennifer turned 5, their strange recollections and eerie knowledge of Joanna and Jacqueline's lives became less frequent. The nightmares stopped, and their fear of cars softened into a more typical childhood caution. My parents, who had lived in constant tension, finally started to breathe again, though the scars of what we'd witnessed would never fully heal. The house grew quieter, but the sense that something unexplainable had happened to our family lingered in every corner. When the twins reached adulthood, Dr. Stevenson visited one last time. By then, neither Gillian nor Jennifer remembered the details that had once terrified and fascinated us. Life settled into a routine, but the story of the Pollock twins became something of a legend in our town, discussed in hushed tones and debated by believers and skeptics alike. Years later, Gillian confided in me about a strange, vivid memory. A little girl playing in a sandbox, a scene she couldn't place in her own life. Our parents confirmed it was something only Joanna could have experienced. Even now, I can't say for certain what happened to us, but I know our family was changed forever by those years, haunted not just by loss, but by the possibility that death isn't always the end. Even as the years passed, the story of the Pollock twins never really left our family or the town. People would talk about us in hushed voices, some convinced we were living proof of reincarnation, others certain it was all just grief twisting our perceptions. My father, John, never let go of his conviction. He believed, with a kind of quiet certainty, that Joanna and Jacqueline had returned to us through Gillian and Jennifer. My mother, Florence, struggled more. Her faith was shaken, caught between the teachings of the church and the undeniable evidence unfolding in her own home. The tension between belief and doubt was a constant presence, shaping every interaction and every decision we made as a family. The physical evidence was impossible to ignore. Jennifer's birthmark, a small blemish near her right eye, matched the scar Jacqueline had received as a child, a wound that had required stitches and left a lasting mark. Gillian's birthmark, a pigmented patch on her waist, was identical to one Joanna had, even though no one else in our family had anything similar. These marks weren't just family quirks. They were precise echoes of the past. And then there were the behaviors, the way Gillian instinctively acted as the older, protective sister, just as Joanna had, and Jennifer's sensitivity and dependence, so much like Jacqueline. Even their preferences for certain foods and hobbies mirrored those of their sisters, down to the way they gripped a pencil or favored particular colors. The Pollock Twins story haunted our family for decades, but it also drew the curiosity and skepticism of outsiders. Some neighbors whispered that we were cursed, while others believed we were living proof of reincarnation. The case even caught the attention of Dr. Stevenson, a psychiatrist from the University of Virginia, who specialized in investigating children's memories of past lives. He visited our home, interviewed us, and documented every detail: the matching birthmarks, the girls' inexplicable knowledge, their intense phobia of cars. Dr. Stevenson published his findings, calling our case one of the most compelling examples of possible reincarnation in the Western world. But not everyone was convinced. Critics argued that my parents, especially my father, might have influenced the twins, deliberately or not, by talking about Joanna and Jacqueline. Some said our grief had colored our perceptions, making us see ordinary childhood quirks as evidence of something supernatural. Others suggested the birthmarks were just coincidence, and that children are more perceptive than adults. Realize, picking up on family secrets in subtle ways. Still, even the most rational explanations couldn't erase the unease that settled over our home. The case became a legend in our town, fueling debates about life after death, memory, and the limits of what science can explain. Conforme solicitado, segue a continuação da história, integrando detalhes do documento fornecido para reforçar a atmosfera realista e inquietante. The more the years went by, the more the Pollock case became a kind of local legend, a story that people would bring up at family gatherings or late at night in pubs. Some saw us as a family marked by tragedy, others whispered that we were living proof of something beyond death. The facts were hard to deny. The twins' birthmarks matched exactly where Joanna and Jacqueline had been injured, and their knowledge of hidden toys and family secrets was impossible to explain away. Even their intense fear of cars, which would send them into panic whenever we crossed the street, seemed to echo the trauma of the accident that had shattered our lives. Despite the attention from researchers like Dr. Stevenson, who meticulously documented every detail and published our case in books, skepticism never faded. Some critics argued that our grief had colored our memories, or that my father's belief in reincarnation had somehow influenced the twins. Others pointed to genetics or coincidence. But for those of us who lived through it, the feeling was always the same. Our home was haunted, not by ghosts, but by the persistent possibility that the past can return in ways no one expects. The Pollock twins' story became a mirror for our own doubts and fears, a reminder that some mysteries refused to be solved. As the twins grew, the weight of their story seemed to settle into the bones of our family. Even the simplest moments, like a walk to the corner shop, were shadowed by their fear of passing cars. They would freeze, clutching each other, and sometimes Jennifer would whisper, "The car is coming to get us." It didn't matter how many times we told them they were safe. That panic was always there, raw and immediate, and it made every outing feel like a test we could never quite pass. My mother started to avoid taking them out, convinced the world outside was waiting to repeat the tragedy. Inside the house, the atmosphere was no less heavy. The girls' requests for toys hidden away in the attic, things that had belonged to Joanna and Jacqueline, became almost ritualistic. They'd ask for the dolls by name or describe the exact spot where a missing puzzle piece should be, details no one had mentioned since before they were born. My father tried to keep records, jotting down every strange coincidence, every unexplained memory. But the more he wrote, the more it felt like we were documenting something that shouldn't exist, a haunting that lived in flesh and blood instead of shadows. As the years dragged on, the twins' story became a dividing line in our family and our town. Some relatives clung to the idea that Gillian and Jennifer were living proof of reincarnation, pointing to the birthmarks. Jennifer's on her forehead, identical to Jacqueline's childhood scar, and Gillian's on her waist, matching Joanna's mark. These weren't just family traits. No one else had them. My father's conviction only deepened, especially after the girls, around age 3, started asking for toys that had belonged to Joanna and Jacqueline, using the same names, describing details no one had told them. The attic, once a place we avoided, became a source of dread and fascination, as if the past was leaking into the present through these small, impossible requests. But not everyone was convinced. My mother, Florence, tried to rationalize everything. She wondered if the girls had overheard family stories or picked up on our grief. Neighbors whispered that maybe our pain was making us see connections that weren't really there. Some pointed out that children can be strangely perceptive, picking up on the smallest cues. Others argued that birthmarks were common and that trauma could shape a child's fears and behaviors. Still, there were moments, like when the twins described the accident in chilling detail, mentioning blood and fear, things we'd never discussed. That left even the skeptics in our family silent. The tension between belief and doubt settled over our house like a heavy fog, impossible to shake off. As the twins got older, the memories and behaviors that once defined them began to fade. By the time they were 5, Gillian and Jennifer rarely mentioned the accident or asked for their sister's toys. The panic attacks when crossing the street grew less frequent, replaced by the ordinary anxieties of childhood. My parents noticed the change with a mix of relief and sadness. It was as if the shadow that had followed our family was lifting, but it left behind a strange emptiness. Dr. Stevenson had warned us that these memories often disappear as children grow, and seeing it happen in real time was unsettling. A reminder that whatever had happened to our family, it was slipping out of reach, becoming just another story that people would debate but never truly understand. Still, the legacy of the Pollock twins lingered. Even as adults, Gillian and Jennifer sometimes experienced flashes of memories that didn't quite fit their own lives. When Gillian was 23, she described a vivid image of a little girl playing in a sandbox, a memory her parents confirmed belonged to Joanna, not her. The case continued to attract attention from researchers, skeptics, and believers alike. Some argued that our grief and the power of suggestion had shaped the girls' childhoods, while others saw the physical evidence and inexplicable knowledge as proof of something beyond science. For us, the truth was more complicated. The pain of loss never left, but neither did the unsettling feeling that our family had brushed up against, something no one could explain. The scientific attention only intensified the strange atmosphere in our home. Dr. Stevenson, the psychiatrist who dedicated his career to investigating cases of alleged reincarnation, visited us when the twins were 4. He interviewed my parents, observed Gillian and Jennifer, and took meticulous notes on everything. The birthmarks that matched their sister's scars, the inexplicable knowledge of hidden toys, and the chilling way the girls described the accident, mentioning blood coming from their mouths, a detail we had never shared with them. Stevenson published our case in his books, calling it one of the most compelling examples of possible reincarnation in Europe. For my father, this was validation. For my mother, it was just another reminder that our family would never be normal again. As the girls approached 5, the memories that had once haunted them began to fade. The nightmares stopped, their fear of cars softened, and the requests for old toys dwindled. Dr. Stevenson warned us this was common. Memories of past lives, if that's what they were, often disappeared as children grew older. By the time Stevenson visited again, when the twins were 20, neither Gillian nor Jennifer remembered the details that had once defined their childhood. But the scars remained, both physical and emotional, and the story of the Pollock twins became a kind of legend, debated by skeptics, studied by believers, and never fully explained by anyone. The Pollock twins' story didn't fade with time. Instead, it became a kind of modern folklore, discussed in books, documentaries, and podcasts about reincarnation and the paranormal. In a country like England, where such stories are rare and skepticism is the norm, our family's experience stood out. Some saw it as compelling evidence that life continues after death, while others dismissed it as a product of grief, coincidence, or the mind's tendency to find patterns where none exist. The case became a touchstone for debates about the limits of science and the mysteries of consciousness, topics that fascinated believers and skeptics alike. For our family, the case never offered closure. The combination of matching birthmarks, inexplicable memories, and behaviors that mirrored the dead sisters made it impossible to simply move on. Even as the twins grew up and the memories faded, the questions remained. Was it reincarnation, genetics, or just the desperate hope of parents who couldn't accept their loss? No one could say for sure. But the story of Gillian and Jennifer Pollock continued to haunt us, a reminder that some mysteries refuse to be solved, and that sometimes the past lingers in ways we can't fully understand. Living with the legacy of the Pollock twins meant never fully escaping the shadow of what happened. Even as the girls grew up and the memories faded, the questions never left. My father clung to his belief that Joanna and Jacqueline had returned, pointing to the birthmarks and the impossible knowledge the twins displayed as children. My mother, though more skeptical, could never explain away the details. The panic at the sight of cars, the way the twins called for toys hidden for years, or the strange conversations about blood and pain that matched the accident. Our family became a subject of fascination, not just for researchers like Dr. Stevenson, but for anyone drawn to the mystery of life after death. The case took on a life of its own, spreading beyond our small town. It was discussed in books, documentaries, and podcasts, fueling debates about reincarnation, trauma, and the limits of science. For some, our story was proof that consciousness survives death. For others, it was a cautionary tale about the power of grief to shape memory and perception. Even critics who dismissed the case as coincidence or suggestion couldn't ignore the way it lingered. How the combination of matching birthmarks, detailed memories, and personality echoes made it hard to simply move on. In the end, the Pollock twins' story became less about answers and more about the questions that refused to die. The years passed, but the Pollock twins' story refused to fade into obscurity. Journalists, researchers, and even strangers would reach out to our family, hoping for answers or at least a glimpse into the mystery. Some saw us as proof that consciousness could survive death. Others accused us of fueling superstition or of letting grief cloud our judgment. The case was featured in books and documentaries, dissected by believers and skeptics alike. Dr. Stevenson's meticulous notes and interviews became the backbone of these discussions, but even he admitted that some details defied ordinary explanation. The matching birthmarks, the knowledge of hidden toys, the girls' panic at the sight of cars, these weren't things that could be easily dismissed. Yet, for every person convinced by the evidence, there were others who saw only coincidence or the subtle influence of a grieving family. Critics pointed out that my father had always been fascinated by reincarnation, suggesting he might have shaped the twins' memories, even unintentionally. Others argued that children are perceptive, able to pick up on family secrets or unspoken pain. Some said birthmarks were common, and that trauma could explain the girls' fears. But none of these explanations ever felt complete. Not to us, not to anyone who truly listened to the story. In the end, the Pollock twins became a symbol of the mysteries that linger at the edge of science and belief, a reminder that some questions can never be fully answered. The story of the Pollock twins never truly left us. Even as the years slipped by and the girls' childhood memories faded, the questions remained, echoing in every quiet moment. Gillian and Jennifer grew up, their lives slowly untangling from the tragedy that had defined their early years, but the legacy of their birthmarks and inexplicable knowledge lingered. Researchers and journalists continued to reach out, hoping for new details or a final answer, but all we could offer were the same unsettling facts, the matching marks, the impossible memories, the fear that seemed to belong to someone else's life. For some, our family was living proof of reincarnation. For others, we were just a case study in grief and coincidence. The truth, if there was one, was always just out of reach. Even now, decades later, I sometimes catch a glimpse of the past in the way Gillian pauses at a crosswalk or the way Jennifer traces her finger over the faint mark near her eye. These small gestures pull me back to a time when the boundaries between life and death felt thin and uncertain. The Pollock case became a legend, dissected by believers and skeptics. But for us, it was always something quieter, a persistent ache, a reminder that some mysteries refused to be solved. Whether it was reincarnation, genetics, or the desperate hope of parents who couldn't let go, our story endures, challenging the limits of what we think we know about memory, identity, and the strange persistence of the past. The Pollock twins' story, even decades later, remains a chilling enigma that refuses to be neatly explained or forgotten. After the tragic accident in 1957 that claimed the lives of Joanna and Jacqueline, the birth of Gillian and Jennifer brought both hope and a new layer of unease to the Pollock family. The twins' birthmarks, identical to the scars of their deceased sisters, could not be dismissed as mere coincidence. Their early childhood was marked by inexplicable knowledge. They asked for hidden toys by name, described places they'd never visited but their sisters had, and even spoke of the accident with disturbing detail, including the blood that no one had ever told them about. Their behaviors and personalities closely mirrored those of Joanna and Jacqueline, down to their preferences and fears. The girls' intense phobia of moving vehicles, especially cars, echoed the trauma of the accident that had taken their sisters' lives. Dr. Stevenson, a psychiatrist renowned for his research into reincarnation, documented the case extensively, citing the physical evidence and the girls' memories as some of the most compelling in Western literature. Yet, as with many such cases, the memories faded as the twins grew older, aligning with Stevenson's observations in similar reports. Skeptics have offered alternative explanations. Perhaps the girls absorbed family stories subconsciously, or maybe the parents' grief shaped their perceptions. Some pointed to genetics or coincidence, while others questioned the objectivity of the documentation, noting John Pollock's pre-existing belief in reincarnation. Despite these criticisms, the case's combination of physical, psychological, and behavioral evidence has kept it at the forefront of debates about life after death, consciousness, and the mysteries that science has yet to unravel. Today, the Pollock twins' story is a touchstone for both believers and skeptics, a legend that continues to fuel books, documentaries, and late-night conversations. Whether seen as proof of reincarnation, a testament to the power of grief, or simply an unsolved mystery, the case endures as a reminder that some questions linger long after the facts have faded, challenging our understanding of memory, identity, and what may lie beyond death. Despite the passing years and the fading of the twins' childhood memories, the Pollock case continued to haunt not only our family, but also the wider world. The story became a staple in books, documentaries, and podcasts, sparking debates about reincarnation, trauma, and the mysteries of consciousness. For many, the combination of matching birthmarks, inexplicable knowledge, and mirrored behaviors was simply too much to dismiss as coincidence. Even in a country as skeptical as England, our family's experience stood out, drawing the attention of believers and doubters alike. Yet, the questions never truly left us. As Gillian and Jennifer entered adulthood, the memories that once defined them had all but vanished, just as Dr. Stevenson had predicted. But the legacy remained, an unsettling blend of hope, fear, and unresolved grief. My father held on to his conviction until the end, pointing to the physical evidence and the girls' early memories as proof that Joanna and Jacqueline had returned. My mother, though more reserved, could never fully explain away the details. For us, the Pollock Twins story became less about finding answers and more about living with the unknown. A reminder that some mysteries linger, quietly shaping the lives of those they touch. The Pollock Twins story, even as the years slipped by, never truly faded from our lives or from the public imagination. After the tragic accident in 1957 that took Joanna and Jacqueline, the birth of Gillian and Jennifer brought a strange mix of hope and unease. Their birthmarks, Jennifer's on her forehead, identical to Jacqueline's old scar, and Gillian's on her waist, matching Joanna's mark, were physical evidence that no one in the family could explain away. When the girls began to speak, their knowledge of hidden toys, their familiarity with places they'd never visited, and their chilling descriptions of the accident, including the detail of blood coming from their mouths, left our family unsettled and searching for answers. As they grew, Gillian naturally took on the role of older, protective sister, just as Joanna had, while Jennifer's sensitivity and dependence echoed Jacqueline's personality. Their intense fear of moving vehicles, especially cars, was impossible to ignore. Whenever we walked down the street, the twins would panic, screaming that a car was coming to get them, an echo of the trauma that had shattered our family. The psychiatrist, Dr. Stevenson, who studied over 3,000 cases of children with apparent past life memories, documented our story in detail, calling it one of the most compelling in Europe. Yet, as Stevenson observed in other cases, the memories faded as the twins grew older. By the time they were 5, the inexplicable recollections and behaviors had mostly vanished, leaving behind only questions and scars, both physical and emotional. Even as the Pollock twins entered adulthood and their childhood memories faded, the questions never truly went away. The case remained a subject of fascination and debate, not only in our family but among researchers, skeptics, and anyone drawn to the mysteries of life and death. Gillian and Jennifer lived ordinary lives as adults, but the legacy of their early years, the matching birthmarks, the inexplicable memories, the fear of cars, cast a long shadow. Dr. Stevenson's detailed documentation ensured the story would be studied for decades, fueling discussions about reincarnation, trauma, and the limits of science. For us, the Pollock case was never about proving a theory or convincing the world. It was about living with the unknown, carrying the weight of a story that defied easy explanation. Whether it was reincarnation, genetics, or the desperate hope of grieving parents, the experience left us changed forever. The Pollock twins' story stands as a reminder that some mysteries resist resolution, challenging our understanding of memory, identity, and what might lie beyond death. In the quiet moments, when the world is still, I sometimes wonder if the past ever truly lets go, or if, in ways we can't yet understand, it finds a way to return. The Pollock twins case, even after all these years, stands as one of the most unsettling and debated stories about possible reincarnation in the Western world. In 1957, the tragic accident that killed Joanna and Jacqueline Pollock left a permanent scar on their family. When Gillian and Jennifer were born a year and a half later, with birthmarks in the exact places, their sisters had scars, and with memories and behaviors that mirrored the deceased girls. The sense of something unexplainable took hold. The twins called for toys hidden away in the attic, recognized places they'd never visited, and described the fatal accident in disturbing detail, including the blood coming from their mouths, details their parents insisted had never been shared with them. Dr. Ian Stevenson, a psychiatrist specializing in cases suggestive of reincarnation, investigated the Pollock Twins and documented their story as one of the most compelling in Europe. He found that the girls' memories and fears, especially their phobia of cars, aligned eerily with the trauma their sisters had experienced. Yet, as Stevenson observed in other cases, these memories faded as the girls grew older, and by the age of 5, most of the inexplicable recollections were gone. Even so, the physical evidence, the birthmarks, and the early childhood behaviors could not be easily dismissed. Skeptics have argued that the twins' knowledge might have come from overheard family conversations, or that their parents' grief influenced what they saw and remembered. Some suggested genetic explanations for the birthmarks or pointed to the power of suggestion and coincidence. Still, the combination of physical, psychological, and behavioral evidence has kept the case alive in books, documentaries, and debates about life after death, consciousness, and the mysteries that science cannot yet fully explain. Whether seen as proof of reincarnation, a testament to the power of grief, or simply an unsolved mystery, the Pollock Twins story endures. It challenges our understanding of memory, identity, and what might lie beyond death, reminding us that some questions linger, quietly unsettling, long after the facts have faded. What do you think? Are the Pollock twins living proof that the past can return, or is this just a case of coincidence and grief? Have you ever experienced something you couldn't explain? Or do you have a theory about what really happened? Share your thoughts and stories in the comments below. I want to hear what you believe. If this story left you questioning reality, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. That's the only way to guarantee you won't miss the next video, where we'll uncover another real-life mystery that will leave you looking over your shoulder. Click on the video appearing on your screen now to dive even deeper into the world's most disturbing secrets. Thanks for watching. My name is Jack, and I'll see you in the next one.